let's begin on the situation regarding Twitter's board here. What is going to be the play by the board, particularly with this poison pill in play as the primary defense mechanism? And is there a risk here, perhaps, of a long, drawn-out legal battle if the board eventually ends up rejecting this offer?
Yeah, so the poison pill, or the shareholder rights program, is doing exactly what it was intended to do. It's buying the board time to try to explore some strategic alternatives. So they've hired the investment banks to try to get a sense of fair value and consider the offer that Musk made at $54.20 per share. What they're doing right now is looking for what we call a white knight, another buyer in terms of either a private equity firm or even a strategic buyer, although I think most Wall Street analysts are skeptical that there's enough strategic buyers out there that wouldn't, create sort of antitrust concerns. So the board is trying to find a potential buyer. Ultimately, if their options are limited, which I think many people have conjectured that they are, they're either going to have to decide whether to try to negotiate with Musk and accept a deal, or reject Musk and sort of stick with management and deal with the fallout, which will certainly include lawsuits and some reputational impact.
And of course, one of the other key concerns out there right now is exactly what Twitter's fair value is, because when you look at this business, you can see value in Twitter as a platform or value in Twitter as a company. What do you think would happen to the stock if Elon Musk actually just walked away from this today?
Yeah, so if Elon Musk walks away and goes through with the threat to sell the shares if they don't accept his offer, we would expect a short-term negative impact on the price, if nothing else from the liquidity of selling almost 10% of the shares outstanding. But it would also signal that there weren't other buyers that saw that type of value in Twitter. So I expect that its stock price would drop down significantly from its current levels.
Just walk us through, Josh, how you see this in the sense of Apollo being potentially interested here. There's been so much conversation recently, of course, around what Elon Musk is really trying to do with Twitter. Is he going to open it up? Is he going to say people like Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin get their Twitter accounts back? Well, how do you see this playing out in terms of the interest from the further interest, if you will, beyond Mr. Musk?
Yeah, so it's a little enigmatic. Apollo came into this, and I guess they've made it clear that they're not necessarily joining a consortium of PE firms, but I think that looking to help maybe potentially finance Musk. Musk has the assets to buy Twitter outright, but it's concerned of, does he have the liquidity to do it right now? And so I think the PE firms are probably considering some of those changes to policy and whether or not that would potentially unlock value. And they're also probably considering the impact on employees. I think Twitter employees might have some concerns if those types of policies are changed. And a lot of their value is created from, attracting and retaining their valuable employees. So all of these are discussions that they're having now, trying to think about future strategy.
Right. What kind of concerns do you think that this brings up for the SEC, potentially even further down the line at this point? Because obviously these aren't bids from Google and Facebook.
Right. So, first we have to start with Musk's offer. It wasn't necessarily a binding offer. It's just a letter of intent, which is typically the start of the deal process. It was certainly unusual for him to come out and say, this is my best and final offer. That's not a negotiation tactic that necessarily leads you to the negotiation table. The SEC has a contentious history with Musk. It goes back, all the way back to the tweet about taking Tesla private at 420 with funding secured. And so, I'm sure Musk is not happy about that lawsuit and the fallout of that. In this particular episode, the SEC is going to be monitoring, just making sure that, securities laws are being followed. And of course, Musk's ownership position, he filed the wrong form with the SEC. He filed one saying he would be passive rather than active. And it was also a late filing. So I think the SEC might use some of that, to support some of their proposed rule changes, which could expedite activist investors when they accumulate a block ownership like Musk did in Twitter.
I thought it was interesting, though, because there has been some commentary from a former SEC chairman, Harvey Pitt, who said that the Twitter board gets grade F for how they've managed this so far. And, of course, the concern around the board is that this is a board that effectively owns no shares of Twitter. This is a board that, in some instances, actually does not even use the Twitter platform as a service. And at the same time, this is a board that seems to exist just to collect fees at this point. Even Jack Dorsey says it has historically been the dysfunction of the company. Would you agree with that, Professor? And what do you think it says about corporate governance at this company as it stands?
Yeah, it's certainly a tough time to be a director at Twitter. You know, most of the time being a director is an enjoyable job, but these are the times that shareholders really are paying that compensation for you to make choices in their best interest. You know, the comments by Dorsey and Musk, these are all plays to shareholders. You know, if Musk eventually does proceed with maybe a tender offer to try to convince the shareholders to sell despite the poison pill, trying to, you know, cast the board in a bad light is a way to potentially appeal to shareholders. You know, Twitter's compensation, their ownership is potentially low versus, you know, some other technology companies, but they hire a compensation consultant, and that is, you know, they've come up with minimum ownership thresholds for their boards of directors, and to my knowledge, they're in compliance with that. So I think what we're seeing is these sort of external governance mechanisms like hostile takeovers being a substitute mechanism for governance. So if the ownership of the board is low, academic research shows you're more likely to get a bid externally, and that's sort of playing out in this episode.
Yeah, it's interesting. And just the question of whether or not you actually think Musk is going to be able to get this, and also the question of whether you think he's going to be able to bring about effective change at this business, which has been stagnant for a while, right? Lots of talk about perhaps introducing something like an edit button, but of course, dealing with cancel culture, dealing with the bots, dealing with the monetization issues. Is he actually going to be able to pull this off, do you think?
You know, it's tough. Anytime we try to predict what Elon Musk is doing, he's very unorthodox in his management style, but he's been very successful. You know, you look at the market cap growth and revenue growth at Tesla and his ability to run more than one company. I think, you know, you wouldn't want to gamble or bet against Elon Musk creating value at a company. That said, you know, given his past history of claiming to take Tesla private and then not following through with that, it's tough to know if this is something that's done just to attract attention, to be a gadfly, or is it something that he truly has an interest of going through with the offer? And I think you can see that in the market response. It didn't go up to Musk's offer for the price at first, but as more and more news comes out, it appears as though Twitter, you know, there's a more and more likelihood that it will be sold to either Musk or some other entity.